Hello,
Wow,
everyone.
everyone. Today is a silly day.
My
It's
favorite part is that Eva was like, "I'm just gonna let him figure it out." Like she didn't even like try to like for good reason. Like was like, "I'm just gonna let them play this out and
it's
just sit in the background."
the energy is crazy over
It's
here
a
right
lot.
now.
It's a lot.
I struggled to do things I should definitely know how to do. Christine helped me, and then we both got lost for a second inside of Zoom, and it's been a
Yeah,
little bit of not a nightmare, but definitely an uncomfortable dream.
an uncomfortable dream. I was stuck in M's desktop.
It was
Imagine the dream
exactly
that
as
was.
people think my desktop
Well, the
looks.
wildest part was like I was like, it looks a lot like my desktop because I have a lot of pictures of M on my desktop for whatever reason, for various reasons. And so I was like, I feel like some sort of kinship here. Although I did notice you don't have many pictures of me on your desktop, so I felt a little bit.
I I do like a weekly like highlight everything and then shove it in a folder so I never have to look at it
Isn't that
again.
fun? I do that too.
And now I've got like about 50 folders. I know at least 10 of them are just pictures of you because I've
Oh,
saved them
that's
for
what I like
random
to
holidays and projects.
hear. Yes.
But yeah, this was obviously a me week, which is why all the pictures on the desktop are literally of me.
I love
So,
that for you though, like a me week for you.
how are you, Christine? I missed you so much. I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while.
How are you? I like your chartreuse background.
Oh, thank you. So this is part of my childhood bedroom.
It's green.
Uh,
It's very. My brother's bedroom was that same lime green color.
Yeah, well, I was 15. It was a summer break choice where I think I let a little too loose.
It's
And
very
also,
2000s.
thank you. And also my
I
mom,
didn't mean that as a compliment, but you're welcome.
15-year-old me would be
I'm
ecstatic.
just teasing.
But yeah, we're if you look at all of if you could look closely, my mom, this was my first time she let me paint a room. She was like, if it's your room, you can do whatever you want. And it's just like the worst paint job ever. There's drips
I'm
everywhere.
gonna be honest, it looks, I mean, I can't see closely, but like, as you know, I painted many rooms in my house at age 30 and it is just a disaster. So the fact that 15-year-old you even finished painting an entire room, including stripes and stuff, like, I don't know how you pulled that off.
Um, I don't know.
It
I
looks
think
good to me.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've got nothing left in here except this bed. And then this room is actually very small. It's only like 8 by 8. It's like the walls are here
Oh
and the
my
walls are
God.
here.
What's on
Like
the wall there
this is the wall.
to your
It's like
left?
it's a like a row of little pictures from when I was a kid.
Oh,
That's literally the only decoration still up here.
oh,
So
nice.
and then but yeah, so this was actually when we first moved in, I think this was supposed to be like a bedroom with a bathroom attached,
Hmm.
and we never put a bathroom in here, so this was the bathroom.
Oh,
That's why it's so small. So this is the bathroom attached to my bedroom. So I was like the cool kid that had like two rooms.
oh,
I had,
but you're saying this was not your entire bedroom. You're saying like, oh, this is part of your bedroom that was going to be a bathroom, but is now your cool stripy
yeah,
closet bedroom.
I made the bathroom that we never did anything with. It was just an empty room. I turned that
Oh,
into where I put my bed, and so I've got like a little
oh,
cave, and then the actual bedroom part was just like where
a
we like
lounge.
hung out as the kids. Yeah, it was, I know, very swanky. I'm
Man, I was like, oh, I get that feeling of having a closet for a bedroom. Oh, that's not. Oh, I see. That's just the
oh,
ensuite of your bedroom. Okay,
that's
my
exactly it.
mistake.
Anyway, so welcome to what should have been my bedroom and my bathroom in 1996.
Oh,
Um,
love that.
yeah, how are you, Christine? I love your room as always. It always looks very clean in that one corner.
Thank you. I know that's why I sit in the corner. I mean, you've been here plenty of times by now. You know that if I were to turn the camera around, it would be really stressful for everyone's psyche. But thank you. I'm sitting in the corner. I'm picking off all my nail polish. And
Cool.
yeah, it's been a great day. My mom is back from Germany after 6 weeks
Oy.
and can finally watch the baby so that you and I can record, which is just splendid.
Did she bring you back any treats?
She did. They brought chocolate and chocolate and chocolate. And then they also brought some baby formula because there's that shortage going on.
Yep.
And I am fortunate enough to have been on like a subscription plan with the company I use. So I am not low, so I found somebody to mail the formula to who's struggling to find food for their baby. So
Nice.
I'm mailing that out after we record. And my mom brought my child her first doll. So
Oh.
yeah, it's cute, thankfully. I was a little worried knowing my mom's history with creepy dolls that she would find something scary looking, but it's actually like fine. Um but yeah,
You,
that's all. I mean, honestly, I'm just so happy she's back to babysit.
Kristen, you got to tell us how your shows went.
Oh, they were super fun. I fucked up the Cincinnati one pretty bad.
Why?
I didn't plug the aux cord in all the way. And so there was no music. I heard the music, but it was coming from my laptop.
Oh.
The first row heard it, so we called it like a VIP perk for the people up front.
Sure.
And then a lot of people in the meet and greet were like, "Oh, I thought that was just a creative choice." And I was like, "Have you met me? Like, obviously, if something's wrong, it's because I fucked it up, not because I did it
Honestly,
on
though,
purpose."
when people have met you, though, they also know that you do make wacky creative choices.
It's true. I
Like,
do nail things to the wall.
You could have just been like, oh, those are our whale noises. Like, that's the Beachy Sandy whale noises.
Yeah, so about 20 minutes before the show ended, I realized there was no music, and I was like, "Oh, well, sorry, everyone." And so it was fine.
Was it music that was playing throughout?
No, so I know you've never. Somebody on the Beachy Sandy Facebook group was like, "Was it a bit that M said they've never listened to Beachy Sandy?" And I was like, "No." It was not
Oh,
a
yeah.
bit.
I hope it doesn't hurt your feelings.
No, it doesn't hurt my feeling. Alexander doesn't
just
listen to our show either.
I just really don't listen to podcasts. And also when I do listen to podcasts, it's to be completely mindless and not really hear the whole thing. So I don't know if listening would be any better, but
No, no. It was just funny because I was like, "Oh man, people thought you were like doing a whole bit," because I was like describing the premise of the show, and they were like, "What?"
I get
No,
you read 1-star reviews of places, and every
yes,
episode is a different place or location or category.
right. And so we have
That I
music.
know.
We have like sad music under the 1-star reviews, like dramatic piano music to like
Very celebrity reads mean tweets
yeah,
situation.
yes, exactly. It's like melodramatic music. We definitely didn't get the rights to REM, which I think is what they use for dramatic or mean tweets. But yeah, so it's like dramatic music, and then under the like positive reviews, we have like redemption music. But anyway, it doesn't matter because it wasn't playing. But then the next night in Columbus, I feel like we like
Nailed
nailed
it.
it. Yeah, so it was really fun. We missed you.
I really did want to be there so
It
badly.
was so weird to be in a green room
Without me having
and
a panic attack on the floor.
well, actually, it was kind of pleasant. My brother and I played Heads Up on my phone.
Oh, that sounds so much lovelier than whatever I've dragged you into whenever we're in a green room. You probably were like, honestly, Sandy, can this just be a you and me situation from now on? Because
No,
M does not make it fun.
no. You do. I feel like it was weird because we've been to the Liberty Township Funny Bone and the
Mhm.
Columbus one, and so I was like, I've been in these green rooms before.
It
But
probably
with
felt like
M.
I imagine it felt like being in a dream where like
Yes.
you're at the amusement park, but your high school teacher's there. And it's like,
Exactly. And that was also
what?
the example when you said amusement park, and I was like, yeah, but then your high school teacher's there. So clearly
Uh-huh.
we have a similar. That is
We've
what it
dreamt
felt
the
like.
same.
Like the
Maybe you were at the amusement park when I was dreaming about it too. Maybe
oh,
our astral souls were trying to
that's
find each
so
other.
cute for us, and so dumb that we couldn't figure it out.
I probably ditched you at the amusement park in Dream World because I
You
got
were
lost.
probably hiding from me. Em, are you here?
I probably was having a panic attack on the floor, just like in our green room. So
Anyway, but thank you for asking about the shows. They were really fun, but we missed you. And you're as we know, in your ensuite right now, back in the homeland.
I am. I'm here for a very brief stint, but Allison came with me, and
Ah,
it's just a quick little moment. But it's been weird because while we're here, it really has been 100% just working, and it's weird to be in a building that a house, but it's weird for me to think of this space as a place
I
where
thought
I
you were about
work
to tell me your
because
home was like some sort of skyscraper.
it's actually
all of a sudden.
an abandoned factory. It's a castle.
That checks out.
But no, it's weird to be here and really like waking up doing work until like 5 or 6 o'clock and then just having dinner and going to bed and doing it all over because
Yeah.
I'm used to coming here and it being like my vacation home.
Like,
Anytime,
yeah.
literally since I left after high school, anytime I come here it's because I'm on break.
Right,
So
right.
it's weird, and Allison's here, so she's definitely keeping me in line with making sure that we're doing our work. Usually, I feel like usually when I'm here, I like am a little more lenient about like, oh, I'm not gonna, mess around, or I'll take an hour off. But when Allison works, she's very type A, and so she's been like, "Are you working? Are you working? What are you doing?" So I'm kind of like scared in my own home right now.
Oh, pleasant.
Yay! But anyway, it's been
Yay.
keeping me on track. I actually already got next week's notes done. So
Good for you.
thank you.
Well, you've been absent from the Slack, Em, so I feel like
I know. I feel really bad about
we've
it.
missed you in the Slack chat.
I have apparently 9 notifications that I have to get back to.
Yeah. We miss you over there, but I'm sure. Oh, and Eva just posted another thing in there, so now you have
my
10.
my little ticker just went to 10. Anyway, by the way, if you have a small business, Slack is something we have tried recently, and Christine and Eva can't stop screaming about it. It has
It's so
become very
It's
useful.
just like gets your thoughts onto something else. So like if you
This
have
is
like
not an ad, by the way, but
no,
Slack, if
I wish
you want
it were.
to.
But if you have like a thought or an idea, or like, oh, you want to touch on something, you can just like throw it in there and either like set a reminder or just like leave it for someone else to look at later. I mean, it's just very nice to have. And I know that I was like, Alexander, let me show you Slack. He's like, Christine, I've been using this for like 7 years. What do you like?
I'm sure everyone
Thank
else
you.
is thinking that right now. If it's
I know.
Like
I'm like,
Discord,
and nobody likes it because it's always like for work. But I just like it because I feel like our group chat used to be like Eva sending 18 messages and then being like, "Hey,
yeah.
I know like this was 3 days ago, but you really need to respond to this specific thing." And then we'd like scroll and try to find the link, and it's just a lot easier.
Yeah.
So anyway, we missed you in there, Em, but I'm sure you'll be popping in to.
After we record, I'll probably catch up on all of it.
I don't think there's anything urgent.
I trust me, I'm aware of it though, because when I woke up, I was looking at all my updates, and I was like, "Ooh, I really got to get back on
There's some
Slack."
talk about like horses in there, so I think you're not missing like anything too vital, you know.
I hope that's all 10 of the
Eva told us
notifications.
a revelation that she was a horse girl growing up.
I think I did know that, and I think I intentionally blocked it out.
Oh, this might be one of those like what happens in Slack stays in Slack, and I'm breaking the rule. But Eva did announce that she was a horse girl.
I think my mom wanted me to be a horse girl.
Yeah, I bet she did. That's such a Linda move.
Well, she made me go to like summer camp where like you did horseback riding.
Oh, Eva.
And it didn't work. Let's just put it that way.
Seem like something you'd be into.
I rode 2 horses for like 3 years or something, and I think I got 4 different ribbons. And when I got, yep, and
Wait,
then
hold on, I'm learning so much about you and Eva right now.
This was completely out of like under duress. Like I did not want this. To be fair, but so
You're like being handed a ribbon. You're like, I don't want it.
like, take it away. Yeah, I don't know where they are. I think I threw them away. But
I bet Linda knows where they are.
She just might. I don't want to know. I
I'd
don't
like
want
to have them for my own.
remind her of that. But no, I really like the summer camp. But my mom, I think, lied to me at one point and said that a requirement was to do horseback riding there. But I found out they were like all elective based, like 5 years into going to this fucking place.
Your mom signed you up for horseback riding.
Anyway, I did not have a lot of fun, but I do know how to ride a horse if something were to happen.
Man, meanwhile,
I
I
know
was
how to
just,
like set up a saddle and all that.
What?
Yeah, and
Oh,
like clean their
cool.
feet, clean their hooves and all that.
I didn't have that experience. I played with a hose usually in the summer.
That sounds so fun.
It
And
was.
cheaper. What is my mom thinking?
To be fair, it was.
Let's get into some spooky stuff,
Yeah,
Christine, because we have a part 2 I've got to finish.
Oh yeah.
I've got a score to settle.
What was it? An exorcism?
Oh yeah. So this, I'll catch you up, sweet
Okay.
Christine. Don't you even worry.
Thank you.
Oh, so by the way, I see your little, what's it called? Coochie Kopi?
Yes.
I am seeing the movie tonight. The Bob's Burgers movie.
Oh my gosh, have fun. I'm so jealous.
I don't know anything about it. I know that apparently I'm going. Again, under duress, but it's not that bad. I'm pretty excited.
It's not that bad. Yeah. I wish I could go under duress, but alas, I have an infant. But I am also, I want to point out, I'm burning this candle that the lovely
It's a lot
Eva-
lower. It's
Eva-
not going to burn your cabinets.
Oh, right. I guess I shouldn't keep putting candles on here, but you're right. This one is, oh, you know what? Everyone's going to be mad. So I am going to move it before they like report me to YouTube. But Eva and Rachel gave me this beautiful candle, this Ouija candle for my birthday.
What does it
Isn't
look
it
like?
nice?
Goodbye. It
Says
says
goodbye.
goodbye.
Yeah, it's lovely, and it's hand poured in downtown LA by Purgatory Candle Company. So I'm gonna,
Purgatory. Hang on, they're in LA?
yeah, downtown LA it says.
Well, I guess I am heading right over to Purgatory candle shop.
You are heading to Purgatory. I already know that about you.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So, okay, this is the second part of the Becker family haunting, which is what I named it, but it is known as the first televised exorcism. And to catch you up, it's a couple, Edwin and Marcia, and they own a boarding house where they live on the top floor, and the bottom floor they were renting out to people, but they really can't keep people in there because there are a lot of spooky things going on. And to a point where when Edwin goes to work, Marcia is hiding out in the kitchen because she feels the safest in that room. And she is kind of losing her mind. The couple is getting into a lot of fights and their relationship's getting damaged to a point where Marcia eventually leaves because she can't take it anymore. And Edwin stays for a month at the house by himself. And I think he has some sort of aha moment, goes back to find Marcia and says, please come home. We are going to make this work. Let's seek professional help together.
It was like when the ravioli burned or something, and he was like, I can't do this anymore.
It was in the 70s, and he was like, one dinner I
Chef
tried, and it burnt to shreds. I need my housewife back. No. I'm sure there were other reasons, but it is some very silly context.
Suspicious timing.
Yeah, very convenient timing. So Edwin and Marcia, they were fed up with their haunted house. It was destroying their relationship, and they decided to seek professional paranormal help. Keep in mind, though, that this haunting of theirs, this was before The Exorcist came out. This was before Amityville Horror came out. There wasn't really this boom in paranormal awareness, I guess.
Right.
So they really had nowhere to turn to. There weren't any ghost hunters you could just call at the time. It was really a very quiet community that they didn't know how to access because there was no internet.
Right.
So the best that they could do was Marcia decided to go through the phone book. And the first group that they find, I don't know if I would even call them investigators or if they were there to bless the house. I think, according to them, they had good intentions, but they were more or less just paranormal enthusiasts, like thrill seekers.
Love that they have a number in the phone book, though.
Honestly, wait
cool.
a minute. Can we get Eva, put us in the phone book as paranormal enthusiasts. I want to be a paranormal thrill seeker. Make us a group and just give us one number, a Google Voice number, and people can do whatever they want with that from the phone book.
Fun.
Okay, so they have this group come in and try to have them bless the rest of the house. And in interviews with Edwin and Marcia, they basically say that they were more terrified of the house than helpful when they came over, this one group.
Oh, okay.
At the end of them walking around and like kind of getting spooked by all the activity, someone in the group tells them, okay, you don't have any more spirits here, to like calm them down, I guess. But as he says that, the phone book flies off the table and slams to the floor in front of them.
Not the phone book. That's
like the beginning and the end, full circle.
Yeah.
And so they take off and they were of zero help. So,
great. Excellent.
So that was the first attempt. The second attempt at help from the phone book, Marcia finds this group called Illinois Psychic Research. And which, by the way, I feel like even if I didn't have a paranormal thing going on, if I had a phone book at the time and I was just looking at names, if I saw Illinois Psychic Research, I'd be calling it regularly anyway.
Get him on the horn.
Yeah.
Get the IPR on the horn.
The IPR.
Is that what they are? IPR?
Yeah, Illinois Psychic Research.
Psychic Research, okay.
So they sent out this guy named Tom Valentine to the Becker's house. So Illinois Psychic Research sent out Tom Valentine, and here's why. There was a well-respected, I think like nationally well-acclaimed psychic medium at the time. And his name was Joseph DeLuise. And he had predicted like a bridge getting destroyed. He had helped track down victims of like the Manson murders.
Oh my God.
He was, I think that was probably what really made him well
Big,
known.
big time.
Yeah. And so Joseph de Louise, he was very well known for his psychic mediumship. And Tom Valentine, he was fascinated with everything that Joseph de Louise was doing. And I think Tom was a former like LA Times reporter or something, or he was still an LA Times reporter. And he went on to write an article about Joseph de Louise and his work with the Manson murders, because this piece that he wrote was about, quote, the correlation of people in the occult and people with mental illness.
Okay.
Just to see where Charles Manson fit in with all of that.
Sure, that's interesting.
I thought it was interesting too.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the article, but it seemed like especially in the 70s, probably a novel article.
Oh,
probably
yeah.
original. So basically he ended up writing this piece in the psychic world, or about the paranormal or parapsychological, and he kind of just fell into the parapsychology world. So instead of being an LA Times reporter, I think he quit his job to go work for the IPR, the Illinois Psychic Research.
Wow.
And because of his work with the correlation between mental illness and people involved in the occult, the IPR started sending out Tom Valentine to families' homes that were allegedly haunted. And he would kind of be the first in line to interview these families and analyze them to see if they were really struggling, or if they were just trying to exploit the IPR, or if they were trying to bamboozle them, or if they were doing this for fame. So he was just kind of there to do like a mental check-in before the IPR took them seriously.
Okay, interesting.
So Tom Valentine, sorry, I ate a PBJ and my throat is very itchy now.
Are you allergic?
I don't know.
Why is
Anyways,
your throat itchy? Okay, anyway.
Anyway, we're fine.
Okay.
It'll figure itself out.
Sure.
So as I go,
Yeah, I just keep an eye on you from over here.
yeah, text somebody if you see me fall over on camera.
Okay.
So Tom Valentine was basically like the first person to check out a family before the IPR sent in Joseph de Louise to do his work, especially because Joseph de Louise was now so popular and renowned for his work. They didn't want to just send him in hot to a family who might try to trick him or ruin his reputation.
Sure, that makes sense.
So Tom Valentine goes to the Becker's house and he, checks out the family. And after he gives the okay to the IPR, Joseph de Louise came to see the home. And while Joseph was there, Edwin was very skeptical of mediums in the beginning of this day. Well, the beginning, ever since this day. Mm-hmm. But Joseph brought along with him one of his proteges. And the protege was the one who freaked Edwin out a little bit, because much earlier in this story, something Edwin hadn't told anybody, even his wife, was that when they moved in, he was looking around in the basement, the room that's the scariest and most sinister and the creepiest, and his wife wouldn't even go down there. He was down in the basement and he found a jar full of bullets.
Ew.
And he didn't know what to do with it. I think
Ominous.
he didn't know what to do with it, and so I think he thought, if I throw them away, if someone put something flammable next to them, who knows? He didn't know what to do with them, so he just put the jar up inside the ceiling rafters so he wouldn't have to look at it.
That's such a Christine and M move. We'll just tuck it over here. Nobody will see it.
Out of sight, out of mind.
It's like your desktop. Just put the jar of bullets over in this folder and we'll worry about it another day.
It's object permanence, like a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
And so anyway, now fast forward to now when Joseph de Louise and his protege are there, and as they're walking around, the protege looks at Edwin and says, "Bullets."
Ooh.
And Edwin just said, "Where?" And the protege said, "In the rafters in the basement."
Dun, dun, dun.
And so Edwin was like, "Oh my god."
That's very spooky.
Yeah, so that got him. And so I think that was the beginning of him being more open-minded to mediums. Throughout the night, Joseph determined that the house probably had 4 to 5 spirits that were all probably members of the original family that lived there. Although Edwin and Marcia only felt that they had ever experienced 2 or 3 of the spirits. And Joseph was like, no, there's at least 4 or 5.
Wow.
Of the 2 or 3 that Edwin and Marcia knew about, they had only seen one multiple times, and that was a woman who apparently looks as solidly human as any other person.
Yikes.
If you took a picture of this ghost, you wouldn't know it wasn't a human being.
Right.
And apparently whenever this woman was around, you could tell she was very kind but very sad.
Oh.
And the eeriest part was that this house seemed to have zones where each spirit kind of lived and did their thing, and they didn't really go into each other's zones, which is interesting because they definitely had no problem going into the humans' boundary zones.
Right, for everyone else's zone.
Yeah. But apparently the darkest spirit was always on the first floor, which we already kind of knew because it seems that that was where most of the activity was.
Right. Yeah.
And it particularly loved to bother women. So it bothered Marcia way more than it ever bothered Edwin. When they had the tenants, Dan and Diane, Diane was the one who always had trouble with it. Myra, who was the last living family member to be there before them, she was definitely odd. So we're going to say that the spirit was probably affecting her.
Yeah.
Or I think that's the understanding that the family had, or what there. It was just so, it's a weird coincidence that she seems very unhinged and lived in that house for so long. So I think the idea is that the house
there might be a connection.
And so that was all on, that's very spooky, sinister entity is on the first floor. And so when Joseph DeLuise is doing his walkthrough and he is on the first floor, he says to the couple, there's a real dark energy here and I'm not prepared to deal with it.
Oh, no.
Which is so much worse because, like, you're here to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
That's
now
your
what?
job. Like, what do we do?
Like, thank you for the information. But
Can
now
you
what?
imagine if you finally found someone who's helpful and then he just dead ends you like that? It's like,
He's like, oh, you're right. It's bad here. But I'm going to go home now.
So I think they were like, so what do we do? And Joseph said that the house, particularly the first floor, would require an exorcism.
Yikes.
And again, remember, exorcisms were not pop culture yet. So
Sure, true, right.
Edwin didn't even know what an exorcism was. He was like,
Right.
okay,
Why would
cool,
you?
let's do that. And he had no idea what he was like signing up for.
Cool, yeah.
So Joseph knew a Catholic priest named Joe Wood.
Okay.
And Joe Wood happened to also have a Christian radio program that he hosted on NBC.
Oh.
So Joseph asked Joe Wood for help with the exorcism, but Joe said no, it would be too complicated and he didn't want to be affiliated, which is like, you're a Catholic priest, please help.
I think you have to be like especially trained too. Like not every priest can do that. I think you have to be like
I think you have to also be trained with like the certain rites and rituals.
Yeah,
and all
I
that.
think so. I think it's like a big process.
And well, so then Joe Wood ends up saying, I do know an exorcist. So
Okay.
he was somewhat helpful. So he said, reach out to Reverend William Darrell Davis, who is an exorcist who agreed to help Joseph DeLuise. So now this medium is trying to help the family, goes to this Christian priest or Catholic priest who introduces him to this exorcism. So now it's a medium and an exorcist trying to help.
Walk into a bar. Oh,
Yeah, you get
different
it.
story. Okay, got it.
And so,
Sorry,
funny.
it's hot
Good
here. I
job.
feel like I'm losing brain cells every
I was gonna
5
say,
a second.
are you just
It's
sweltering
like
in
96 degrees outside.
what about
just-
inside?
It's like 99 degrees inside. No, it's not too bad. I actually thought ahead to run my AC unit for a few hours before we started, so it's actually okay.
When our first summer in the Burbank apartment, the air conditioning went out in the building, and it was in the dead of summer, and we bought like ice packs that you put in coolers, like not the ice, like the one brick ice pack, but like the sheet where like
Oh, yeah.
you can cut the little cubes out and make your perfect size. We just froze those and used them as blankets and just held them. I'll
Oh no.
highly recommend though if your place gets too hot while you record.
It's actually kind of smart.
It was genius. It was so helpful. Okay. So now the medium and the exorcist have agreed to work together. So keep in mind, Joe Wood, the Catholic priest, he had a program with NBC. And so I guess when he had been talking to Joseph DeLuise about these problems, he either let it slip to somebody at work or they overheard, but somehow NBC found out that he had turned down an exorcism.
Oh, and you better believe the executives were not happy about that.
They were like, you mean what? Like, can you imagine being a producer and finding out you could be in charge of the first filmed exorcism?
And then the person turned it down? Oh my gosh.
So NBC was like, no, 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 we are going to get involved with this. So
Oh.
they wanted to film a first segment. And Edwin has later said that this was the first time this is a quote from him, this was the first time a major network was going to take something paranormal seriously.
Okay, interesting.
And NBC had one of their lead reporters named Carol Simpson call the Beckers and say, we would love to film this whenever it happens at your house. And Edwin originally said no. And different sources said it was Carol, the news reporter, or it was Tom Valentine from the IPR. But one of them convinced Edwin that they should film the exorcism because Joseph, the medium, who had apparently, according to Edwin, Joseph's, ever since he did the walkthrough, he was very kind with them. He was very patient with them. He never asked for any money. Like, they never paid him anything. He never asked for anything. He was just trying to be of service. And they ended up becoming lifelong friends after this.
Oh, that's nice.
But so when Edwin originally said, I don't want you to film the exorcism, the reporter or someone was like, you really should do this because Joseph DeLuise is actually having a book come out, and this would be really good PR for him.
Oh, and he's your friend, so.
And he's your friend, and he's never asked a single dollar from you, so,
Pay up.
Yeah. And so Joseph was like, okay, or Edwin was like, fine, I'll do it. So NBC came to the house, and the night of the exorcism, Joseph DeLuise, the medium, and Reverend Daryl Davis, the exorcist, were going to lead it. And they said at the beginning of the night, once we start, nobody can leave the house. And they were like already starting to set up filming. And he was like, nobody can leave the house once we started. I don't care how scary it gets.
Uh-oh.
And all of the like white collar NBC execs fucking walked right out the door.
Good. Don't try to be a hero, okay?
They were like, but then they left all of the crew.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
See. Okay.
Yeah, all of the producers were like, okay, crew, you've got this. And I ended up, I saw in one interview that like the sound man, he was like the most terrified, and he was like so desperate to leave. He was like, I want to leave. I don't want to be here. And he basically said he would stay if he could carry around a Bible with him all night.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's what happened. And by the way, later, like, can you imagine? So I'll tell you about it a little bit later. I'll hold on to it. But remind me of the sound man because I just feel so bad for him.
Okay.
So the execs leave. The crew stays with the medium and the exorcist, and the exorcism lasts about 3.5 hours. And I couldn't hear the audio properly. I don't know if he was saying 16 or 6D.
Yeah, it's because like I was carrying a Bible around instead of audio equipment.
Well, Edwin said that in that 3.5 hours, NBC got 16 or 60 hours of footage.
Oh.
Yeah. So just based on how many cameras were in certain rooms and everything. So I don't know. It's still a lot of footage for 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And Edwin said there was actually a lot of tension between Joseph DeLuise, the medium, and the exorcist.
Oh.
Because apparently, which I hadn't really thought of before, he said that mediums and exorcists, their values on how to handle this are completely different, or at least they were then. So one of them, Joseph DeLuise, the way that he wanted to work this out was he wanted to contact the spirits and let them use him as a vessel, and he wanted to open his mind and be vulnerable so they could speak through him.
Oh, dear.
And the exorcist was like, no, like, we have to get this thing fucking out of here. Don't let it possess you. So apparently there was a lot of friction, and Edwin said something in an interview like, in case you ever wonder why mediums and exorcists like aren't doing exorcisms together, like, I watched it firsthand. They really did not get along because they were like battling over like how to handle the situation. So there were times where Joseph would like let himself be vulnerable and let the spirits try to like talk through him, or he would go into a trance or something, and the exorcist was scared the whole time that Joseph was going to get possessed.
Yeah, he did not do an exorcist on a person all of a sudden. Like,
yeah,
hello.
Exactly. Well, that was something he said, that Edwin said in an interview. He was like, right now he only has to exorcise a house.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to exorcise a person, and this one person is willingly volunteering.
Yeah, I feel like that must be
worse.
a personal choice, because I feel like I know some psychic mediums, at least that I've sort of interacted with, who like are not into getting possessed willingly.
Right, yeah. And I wonder, I think Joseph DeLuise was assuming he had enough control that like he
Right.
could toe the line of like, you can use my body to speak through me, but you won't possess me, which I don't totally.
A
He was
dangerous
just
little game.
he was feeling risky that day. And so Edwin remembers when Joseph would go into a trance, they would be able to tell because his breathing and it got heavy and his sweating, he would start sweating heavily. And the exorcist, anytime he heard it, would start freaking out that something was about to happen. So he would very loudly be like, "Come back, Joseph, come back." And that's one of Edwin's big
Ooh, that's
takeaways is
creepy.
he remembers the exorcist keep telling Joseph to come back whenever
That
he went
is
into a
so
trance.
creepy.
Shockingly, very little is shared or known about the exorcism because the NBC segment was very short. Even though they filmed for 3.5 hours, or the exorcism was 3.5 hours, we did not get 3.5 hours of footage.
Right.
So there was a program at the time which was competing with 60 Seconds. My family fucking ate up 60 Seconds. They love
Isn't
60
it
seconds.
60 minutes?
Is it 60 minutes? Oh, it is 60 minutes. I'm so stupid.
It's like 60 seconds. It's like a commercial break.
60 seconds is us going, buy Rothy shoes right
Yeah,
now, quick,
exactly.
go.
60
Sorry, 60
seconds.
minutes. It also, my notes literally say 60 minutes, and my stupid brain was
Wow,
going,
because you did say
seconds.
it like 4 times because I wasn't going to say anything. And then the 4th time I was like, does it really say 60 seconds? That's so
It says
weird.
it says 60 minutes, but I think I said seconds, and then my brain rode with it.
I love that.
Honestly, you know what? TM. But there should be a 60 minutes on TikTok just called 60 seconds.
There might
They could just reboot
there
it.
might be. That might be why you said it. Like maybe it already exists.
Oh, maybe.
Like,
Maybe I just think in TikTok rules now. Where I'm like,
honestly,
it's clearly couldn't be
you
60
couldn't
whole
be.
minutes.
No.
One's attention
Who would
last that long.
watch that?
As we have a 60-minute show. But
As we have a 4-hour show.
okay, so 60 minutes, sorry. But they had, my family, by the way, really did eat up 60 minutes. I remember like
It's a classic.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a show at the time that competed with 60 Minutes called First Tuesday. And on First Tuesday, NBC released a longer version of the exorcism that happened. So when they went in and they got like 16 or 60 hours of footage, I'm unsure. They got that during a 3.5 hour exorcism, but all that they really showed at max was a 20-minute long segment.
Oh man.
So, and they only played that on the First Tuesday segment of NBC. But apparently, that 20-minute segment of the exorcism only showed in a few areas. It didn't show everywhere because there were some FCC regulations where, like, you couldn't show something a certain amount of times. I don't really know what the rule was, but basically, in a lot of parts of Illinois, people did not see the 20-minute segment. They saw a 6-minute segment.
No.
Including Edwin. He was like, I lived in an area where like I didn't even get to watch my own 20-minute segment on my exorcism.
That stinks.
So I don't think the Beckers ever saw the 20-minute version because it only played for that week on NBC and then it went away. They never played it. They never aired it. But what was interesting and helped Edwin in a way was that when the 20-minute version played on First Tuesday, apparently the switchboards at the studio were going crazy. People were freaking out. And they were like, we want to see it again. We want to see it again. And so they played it that week like tens of times.
Oh my gosh.
And so that, in hindsight, helped Edwin feel like, okay, people are interested in this and I'm not like being gaslit into thinking I'm crazy. And,
Yeah.
So anyway, the longer version only ever aired for that week. And that was kind of it. And now the only one you can even find on YouTube is the 6-minute one.
No. I want all that footage. I want those 16 hours of footage.
Me too. But can you imagine having 16 or 60 hours of footage and there only being access to 6 minutes of it?
That's so sad.
Or 60 seconds if you watch my TikTok, apparently.
Watch the TikTok version.
And so of the footage Edwin saw, the 6 minutes, he can confirm that in those 6 minutes, he could hear the sounds of knocking, a voice say mama, and you can see a ghost in a dress appear in the shot for a second.
Ew. God.
And it makes him wonder what else they caught that they were unaware of.
Exactly.
Since we only get 6 minutes of maybe 60 hours of footage. And he's
Give
like, if we
that
got
whole
that,
thing to Zach Bagan's team of producers, and they will find every little click or sound.
even if there isn't, that would be the one day that this very active ghost would be like, I'm doing nothing. And you know what? Ghost Adventures would still make a whole
They'd
production
find
of it.
something. Yeah.
They'd find something. So Edwin thinks at the end of all of this, at the end of the exorcism, Joseph DeLuise and the exorcist, Daryl Davis, probably only got rid of one of the spirits.
Oh, good job.
But definitely not all of them. And whatever happened during the exorcism, Edwin says that Joseph and Daryl Davis definitely failed, and you could tell on their faces when they walked out that night that they weren't happy.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's too bad. Also, though, if I had this whole literal production come out to do an exorcism in my house and nobody looked victorious at the end, I'd be like, well, now I'm really not going in that house.
I was gonna say, now you have to go to bed in there? Are you kidding?
Yeah. Also, you have to go in. It was like not just a failed exorcism in my mind, but it's an exorcism where like the two people leading it couldn't even agree with each other. So like, it just feels like a bad group project. So after this night, Joseph told them to never mess with a Ouija board. He was just kind of giving them the rundown of like things to not like poke the bear.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, Edwin's sister moves in with her husband and kids, and one day she heard the piano playing by itself.
Uh-oh.
And apparently Edwin's brother had also once been in the house and heard the piano play on its own, and he never stepped foot in the house again. He was like, that's too much. I'm not doing this.
Oh my gosh.
So, but the sister was really into it. She, unfortunately, might have been a fan of And That's Why We Drink, because she fucking ate it up. She was like, oh, this house has spooky stuff and the piano plays by itself. So she started bringing her friends over who were also into this stuff. I like to think the And That's Why We Drink fan base is a little more aware, where they're like, let's not make this worse for our people. But
I feel like I'm that girl, and then all my friends are like, hey, let's get Froyo instead.
They're like, no, Christine, that's
please.
it's a very silly idea.
Yeah,
and
I think like someone needs to ground you, you know?
I do think that's why we work so well together, because I think there are times where I'm incredibly reckless and you go, yeah, but we could also not do that.
We could also do that. And likewise, I mean.
And then it flips,
Yeah.
where like you say something chaotic and I'm like, you know what? That's the best fucking idea I ever heard.
right. Sometimes we don't really do the grounding part of it. We just do the other part.
Sometimes we just embolden each other. And so anyway, the sister hears the piano. She starts bringing her friends over. They're into spooky stuff, and eventually they start playing with a Ouija board.
No.
And when Edwin and Marcia find out about this, Edwin storms in, breaks the Ouija board, which I don't know if that's good, because I think they were in the middle of playing with it and never said goodbye. They never talk about that, but I'm thinking that probably was not a good move.
Probably not.
But he just starts freaking out because he's like, how on earth could you let something back into this house?
I would be so pissed. Especially because they have kids in the house too. Like,
yeah, and
it's not even your house. Get out of here.
And I think the whole length of this experience was like 21 months. Like, can you imagine being in this place for over like, can you imagine being here for like a year and a half, almost 2 years, and things are finally not good, but settled. And now all of a sudden this is happening.
I'd be so little livid. Sister shows up. Are you kidding me?
I'd be livid. So Edwin says that during her time in the house too, her behavior completely changed, and eventually she ended up going really downhill.
Oh no.
To a point where Edwin has said in interviews she never recovered.
Gosh.
She apparently left her husband and the kids. She joined a, quote, cult-like group. She apparently became abusive. She and to this day now, when I don't know if she's still around, but as of the most recent interview, to this day, yep, I saw a notification from Slack. And so to this day, like, she refuses to leave her home. She refuses to see anybody. If you go to her home, you can see through the windows that the lights and the radio and everything are on all the time. If you knock on the door, she'll apparently shout out like, "Go away, demon." So her mental health has taken a steep decline.
Terrible.
And so again, could just be good old fashioned mental health problems, but I think the belief here is that the house maybe a part of it left with her and stayed with her.
Oh no.
So people have also allegedly spoke with a little boy named Tommy down there in the basement. So that might have been another spirit that was affecting the home. One of the last people to live in the house as a tenant was, or I think she was the last tenant. Her name was Mrs. Scott. And apparently scary things were also happening to her, and she had a noticeable personality change. And it is interesting to note, earlier I said that the first floor seems to affect women the most, and now we can also add Edwin's sister and Mrs. Scott to that list.
Yeah, that's true.
So after things didn't get better, Edwin and Marcia wanted out of the house for good, but the realtor showed it to a lot of people and couldn't find a buyer. Obviously. I think people were reading the room and being like, this feels spooky. Also, I watched NBC last week.
I watched this on 60 Seconds.
And honestly, TikTok really gave me a concise rundown of how this happened. Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, if 60 Seconds on TikTok handled the segment on NBC, it would only be 6 TikToks. It was only 6 minutes, right?
That's true.
It's like, you could just do for part 6.
And for part 6. And now, I mean, TikTok lets you do 3-minute videos, right? So now you can do 2.
Honestly,
180 seconds. It's not as catchy as 60 seconds.
120.
No, for 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. You're right.
I was like, God, don't gaslight me into thinking I'm that dumb at math. Like, I'm bad at math. Don't get me wrong, but
anyway, if we end up on TikTok later and there is a 60 Seconds channel, I'm going to be I'm going to feel taken advantage of.
Yeah, I feel like if it was created in the last
60 seconds.
60 seconds. I don't even know where I was going with my sentence, so I'm glad you kind of jumped in there.
So they were looking to get out of the house. The realtor could not find a buyer, and eventually Edwin breaks down to him and is like, okay, fine. The reason you can't find a buyer is this place is haunted. And it turns out the realtor and his wife were really into spooky shit.
Oh my gosh. They're like, why didn't you say so?
Yeah. So they were like, can you confirm for us that this is haunted? And Edwin said in an interview, he was like, I went to all my tenants and I had them talk to the realtor.
No.
And all I told them was just be honest. Tell them exactly what happened. Because I think he was afraid they were going to cover for him and say oh no, there's no ghosts, but he was like, tell him everything you know.
Oh my gosh.
And so when the realtor found out that it was really haunted, he desperately wanted the house for himself, but he couldn't afford it. And so Edwin made a deal with him that, I guess in Illinois they've got maybe everywhere, they've got a thing called a quick claim deed, where basically Edwin sold it to him for $10 legally.
Oh.
He was like, just take it, take everything. I don't want this anymore. So sold it to him for $10. And sadly, after he bought the house, the realtor's health and wealth took a steep decline. So just another coincidence. So I don't know how involved the house was in that, but it is interesting.
I mean, to be fair, he is running around just buying random houses for $10 because there are ghosts in them. So I feel like his finances weren't
business might not be booming, yeah.
Right.
So when they left the home, Marcia was nervous that the spirits would follow them, but fortunately they did not. And since the NBC segment in 1971, the Beckers didn't ever publicly talk about it again until 2011. So 40 years later. And I think this was in the 1980s. It could have been all the way up to 2011, but I think it was the 1980s because I saw in an article it said 10 years later. Edwin was writing down his experiences so that, one, he wouldn't forget them, but also to document it for his kids. He was kind of considering it like a diary entry or family archive. So he was writing down everything that he could remember, and over time it somewhat became like a manuscript, and he'd even drawn some it's very a very dad move that he had created some first draft art to go with it.
Aww.
It was very Michael Scott Threat Level Midnight, where he wrote a manuscript and had pictures.
He's like, here's the jar of bullets. I drew it myself.
And so it was as if he was manifesting this could be a poster or something. And so he drew a poster of what he thought the cover of his manuscript would look like.
Oh my goodness.
And he even thought about getting it published a few times under like a pseudonym. I think he was going to use like one of his friends or kids' names or something. But the publishers wanted him to embellish the story because they thought it didn't sound juicy enough. So, and he didn't want to do that, so he just never got it published. But in 2011, his younger daughter read it, straight up took the flash drive, uploaded and published it online with his art and his real name.
Oh, that is such a daughter, like a kid move. Like,
I
just
feel
step
like
aside.
I feel like the daughter's like, Dad, you don't even know what the world is like anymore. Let me just throw this on and let's see what happens to the internet.
Let's
And
just watch the world burn.
also, I love the support of the daughter being like, people need to know this story.
Yeah, and
So-
also let's put your name on it, Dad.
right, he was
You
not
deserve
stoked about
the
that.
credit.
He was not stoked that his name was on it. He also was not stoked because he thought nobody was ever going to see it, and he had written in there like who his favorite aunt was, and then all of his aunts read the book, and like,
oh my god!
it like,
Wow.
so he
Called
like
out.
he was like, I would have at least edited a few things,
Oy.
but so he wasn't super thrilled about the book being published online, but then his friend called him and told him that the book was #1 in new releases. And the book was called True Haunting. And when the book hit #1 in parapsychology, it got the attention of the show Paranormal Witness on my dad's favorite network,
Siffy.
So Edwin and Marcia agreed to finally speak publicly about their story. This was the first time they were ever going to do it. It was probably because everyone liked the book, so they felt safe to do it, but also maybe PR for the book. I don't totally know. But so they ended up going on Paranormal Witness, and it was the episode, season 2, episode 12, called The Tenants.
Is this on Discovery Plus?
I think so.
Because I think I've seen it, and I only remember this because I'm putting it together now because I remember the baby walker scene because they did a reenactment, and I was like, no, don't reenact a baby falling down the stairs. The baby
The
did
baby
not.
walker is part of the story.
Okay, and I remember that, and then I remember the tenants thinking the other one was fighting, and then I remember the little sister showing up. So I feel like I maybe have seen this episode. It's like starting to click a little bit.
It's like you have 60 seconds of it right in your little head.
Yeah, right. I just kind of summed it up for you. There you go.
There's a baby. They're yelling. There's a sister.
There's
Got it.
yelling. This is a sister with a Ouija board. Classic.
It's classics. You're the sister with the Ouija board, by the
I know. That's me, by the way.
way. I feel like this was just Zandy's story, and all of a sudden you show up and you see the piano playing by
Yeah.
itself.
Since when? He never got his #1 on parapsychology. It's not fair.
Did we? By the way?
Yeah, we did.
Woo!
I don't think it was parapsychology, but it was ghosts and hauntings. So
Paranormal Witness? I don't know why we haven't gotten a call yet.
yeah. Well,
Interesting.
okay, that was my next thought. Was like, hang on, it got the attention of whom? Oh, I
Yeah.
don't recall
The Siffy
getting
Network?
there. I don't recall Siffy wanting to speak to us, but whatever.
If you work at Siffy, you could call us. I'm just saying.
They're gonna be like, you pronounce it Siffy. We're not gonna call you.
Especially if we ever did promo for them, we'd be like, welcome, I'm Em and Christine. Welcome to Siffy's
Siffy. I
favorite
mean-
show.
Siffy, sci-fi, Siffy.
So, okay, so they decided they were going to go on Paranormal Witness together. And Edwin said that this experience was actually super cathartic because he never let himself talk about what happened.
Sure.
He kind of wrote it down all those years ago, but never he wrote it down to never think about it again, I think. And they ended up having to stop filming a few times because he got so emotional,
Oh no.
because it was just really affecting him to think about, in hindsight, everything he'd gone through.
Yeah.
And when it aired for the first time, he cried too. And this was a quote from him about the first time he saw the episode. It captured me and it made me well up when I saw the initial scenes. And the initial scenes are them moving into this house very happy. Because when I saw those scenes, I was that young man looking at this building and thinking, this is my future. I'm a landowner. I'm a landlord. We have a home. And it just all went south and it went really, really bad.
Oh, that makes me want to cry.
Yeah. I
That's
just feel so
sad.
bad for him.
Yeah.
Here, now we're going to go back to the NBC exorcism segment for a second, because fun fact, Paranormal Witness is owned by NBC. And so when they were going to do the show, they were like, oh, we're going to use some of the archived footage from your exorcism and put it into the episode.
Yeah, genius.
Paranormal Witness goes to NBC, tries to get the archived footage, doesn't exist.
What?
Completely missing, no official record of it.
What?
All 16 or 60 hours of it completely gone.
No.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
I don't know, just completely missing.
Shit
Maybe there
wasn't even
was
digital back then. It was on these giant
like
tapes.
reels,
Yeah.
which means it was probably easier to steal if someone
That's true.
was maybe. I mean,
But
they
like you'd
literally
have to
had.
steal so many of them to get
I
like
know.
16 or 60 hours of it.
I wonder if it was because, I mean, they also remember the only person who knew about this before it aired was a Catholic priest. Maybe he like did something not so Christian and felt like he needed to hide that footage. Maybe someone else stole the footage. Maybe someone who's a big Ghost fan thought they could steal it as a collectible. Maybe someone didn't agree with it being aired, and I don't know. It's completely gone though, and there's
That's
no record of it
wild.
being there. So Paranormal Witness was like, shit, we already said we were going to produce this, and now like we don't have the footage. So
That sucks. That
it
sucks.
all ended up being reenactments. And all that's left truly is that 6-minute segment on YouTube.
Wow.
And Edwin still has no idea what other activity they might have caught on camera during the exorcism.
Oh, that makes me so mad. I wish they knew where it was. They need to get that other guy who found the jar of bullets to find the tapes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
The protege.
The protege. Like, he knew where the bullets were in the rafters.
That's actually such a good idea. If the
Right?
protege's still around, you need to tell us where those reels of footage are.
Find them.
So, FYI, if you did watch Paranormal Witness, which I know you did, the episode is incredibly embellished. I'm unsure if the hauntings were embellished, but the family's history was certainly inaccurate. They said that instead of there being like that ghost Ben, there were 4 siblings and they all died in the house. And there was a wife who died by suicide to get away from the abusive husband.
What the fuck?
One of the sons was killed by the dad in the basement. Like it was all stuff that I had just listened to, like, I'm not kidding, like 20 hours of interview audio, and then I watched Paranormal Witness and I was like, I don't recall any
Hang
of
on.
this.
That's not a good look, Paranormal Witness. I'm going to be honest with you.
Maybe they needed like filler after they realized they didn't have
I guess
legitimate
so.
They went, we're going to be as legitimate as we can. Oh, never mind.
I guess we're
So-
going to do the opposite of that now.
Yeah, and so I think they were just trying to tie up all the loose ends because like Edwin mentions in this that he found the jar of bullets, and I think they were trying to say like, oh, someone died in the basement and that's why you found the bullets in there. Like they talked about how, like, you know how in the first episode of this, or the part 1 of this, I said that he had gone downstairs and found like a storage space full of porn.
They said they trapped the kid down there, didn't they, or something?
yeah,
I remember that.
They said instead of it being it might have also been a stash of porn, but they found a false wall that led to a room where the kid had clearly been living. Because they were so ashamed of him, they locked him down there and then they shot him.
Yeah, and
So
all
it
the
was
cut
like-
up body parts and stuff. Yeah, okay. I'm actually comforted that might have been embellished because that made me feel really weird. I didn't like that part.
Well, also in hindsight now, I feel like, well, they also said that Ben died in the bathtub, and that would explain why all the weird things in the bathtub were happening, which I talked about in part
Oh.
1.
So
I
they
don't
were
know
just
if
trying to
that's
like,
true.
like tie up the loose ends, I guess. Like you
Yeah, they
said.
also embellished, I think, I don't know, because I've heard such little information about what happened in the exorcism. I don't know
Yeah.
what's true or not. But they might have embellished the exorcism. I also remember saying last week that Dan and Diane, apparently Diane ended up leaving. I don't remember Edwin actually saying that in any interviews in
Oh,
hindsight. So
interesting.
I don't know if she left now that I'm thinking about it. She might have.
Interesting.
The show really threw a fucking curveball at all of the work I'd done.
Seriously, what the fuck?
So if you watch it, know that it is not super duper accurate.
Grain of salt.
Yeah. And so I will say they called the family in the show, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, the Verdiers, Verdere.
Verdier.
So they were saying like, oh, he would always like hang out with his neighbor, and the neighbor would tell him every night like new information about how bad the Verdier family was when they lived here, blah blah blah. On Edwin's personal website, he has in all caps, there is no Verdier family. It was made up for TV.
So don't try and find the Verdier family.
Yeah. So I think they just ran with the fact that he had named the ghost Ben, and then also because Myra, the original family member that lived there and was very unhinged, I think they were combining them as siblings and then added a few more siblings and then created this whole family dynamic in the show, and it was very made up for TV. So
Wow, okay.
But one good thing came from Paranormal Witness, which was that they even interviewed Dan, their tenant, and
Oh
he came
yeah.
back for the show. And Dan and Edwin reunited after 42 years and finally got to sit down and talk about everything they were experiencing.
That's pretty cool.
Because remember, when they lived together, nobody was telling each other the things that
No,
was going on.
yeah.
So they finally got to talk about everything. And when Edwin heard Dan's side to what was happening in the house, he realized that he had all this recent success because of his book, but his book never told the whole story. And so
Wow.
he decided to write a second book with everyone's information in it. So
Wow.
he ended up writing True Haunting 2, where he sat down, he has Dan's information in there. He also sat down with his wife and like heavily interviewed her and got all the nitty gritty details out of her about what she had to deal with. And this is where he realized that he feels like he wasn't the best partner at the time. He
Mhm.
was already kind of aware of it in hindsight, but this really nailed it in for him, where he was like, it took 42 years for me to realize everything my wife was going through, and because I never asked
Wow.
because I was too scared to ask. Um,
Ugh.
and so he found out that she was being touched by something. He found out that she was so paranoid about the children and never let the children out of her sight. He found out that she had taught like their nephews to read and write during that time, like all these random things that like she just never told him.
Oh.
Most importantly, she was able to fill him in on how many times he had had angry changes in behavior where he got like relatively violent and he had blocked them out.
Oh no.
So it's almost like the house was, but then again, who knows if he blocked them out, and I don't know what the full story is there, but
Right.
the theory we're going with was that this house was changing his behavior to a point where he was losing memory.
Yeah.
And she was able to tell him that like he had like smashed his own guitar, he was like
Oh.
destroying his own stuff, and like he said he was like, oh yeah, I did do that, I totally forgot.
Oh yeah, good times.
And so she was able to help fill in some of his blank spots. And
Wow.
after the second book, I think he's written other books, and now he's hosted, co-hosted, guested on several podcasts about it. He put out a YouTube mini series called True Hauntings Season 1, and then there's no other seasons. Fun fact, many say that in his interviews when he's talking about his experiences, they were mainly from 2012 to 2014 because that's when he was promoting his book. But a lot of people say that in those interviews, you can hear EVPs within the audio tracks of the interviews.
That's cool.
And he was like, I can't confirm or deny, but people say they hear stuff all the time in these interviews whenever
Do
I'm
you
on.
guys hear EVPs on our podcast?
Insert EVP here.
Wouldn't that be
No.
cool? Eva, put an EVP right here.
An EVA.
An
Uh,
EVA.
So another fun fact, as of next year, the book True Haunting is getting a movie adaptation called True Haunting, and it comes out next year. So
And that will be maybe even more embellished than the paranormal.
maybe it'll just be Paranormal Witness again.
Maybe they'll just put it on the big screen.
And it's gonna star, I never know how to say her last name, but Erin Moriarty.
Moriarty?
Moriarty, is it?
I mean, I don't know who that is, but if it's
Oh, okay.
Moriarty, then it's Moriarty.
Okay. Well, her. She was in The Boys. She was in Jessica Jones. She's in True Detective.
Oh!
So it's gonna star her.
I
and
watch
then,
all of those shows and I still didn't know. I'm terrible at people's names. I'm sorry.
well, it's gonna be her and then Jamie Campbell Bower, who was in the Harry Potter franchise, the Twilight franchise. He's in Stranger Things 4.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, I like this girl. She's really good in The Boys.
And so they are going to be starring in it together, and people assume they'll be playing Edwin and Marcia because they're like in their 20s and just starting their life
Well, that's
together.
exciting.
Yeah. And as for the Beckers, Edwin did stay in touch with Joseph DeLuise, the medium, after the exorcism. He reunited with Dan and became friends after Paranormal Witness. And he got to know a lot more mediums. And he now says that he is much less skeptical of mediums due to his friendship with Joseph. And he says that there are a lot of people out there with real gifts.
Wow.
And he does, however, believe that you should not go looking for trouble if the paranormal is not bothering you. And if something is happening in your home, but it's not scary, he says not to mess with it because you might get it acting up or be more powerful or trying to test the waters if it knows that you're interested in playing its games.
Oh, yikes.
And as for their theories on how on like just the spirits in their house and like what they meant, who they were, why they were there. Edwin thinks that they could have been the previous family members that allegedly had some mental illness. He also thinks they could just be family members from the previous family that are mad that new people live there. He thinks they could be conjured spirits from either the previous family or his sister playing with a Ouija board.
Yeah.
He thinks it could be the land itself is haunted and not the house, because another house nearby allegedly has a lot of activity. And both homes were once owned by the same landowner, so he might have caused something. And also Edwin says that might also be a coincidence because a lot of older homes at the time like had funerals in their parlor room. So like
Right.
all houses of that time are probably haunted. So he doesn't really know where it came from, but whatever these spirits were, Edwin admits that in hindsight, he was very disrespectful of their belongings in the beginning. He remembers throwing a lot of things out. He also knows it was wrong to challenge Ben with like tying the door closed and telling him like, you can't even break a string. And
Ooh, yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah, so he realizes in hindsight that he was just not being respectful, and he gave Ben room to stir the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And Marcia follows more of the blueprint theory, where she thinks that the spirits could, on their side of the veil, they are seeing their own things and their spaces being messed with by these strangers, and they just hated it. But as for the last update we know on the house, it was in foreclosure in 2017, and shortly after their NBC segment, The Exorcist and the Amityville Horror came out, which led to a boom in the fear and interest of the paranormal.
That's for sure.
And that is the first televised exorcism.
Wow, that was a good story, Em.
Thank you.
Wow. That was a lot. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I feel like I have to go re-listen to everything, because I that was, and to think that fucking topic was supposed to be like the shortest topic I ever covered, and it ended up being two long
like,
two-parters.
You were gonna do it in one episode?
It really I'm impressed, by the way, with the amount of digging I did, because I really couldn't find anything for a while until I was like, there must be something to this if they're literally making a movie. All I had seen when I first got interested in this topic was that, oh, a movie next year is coming out about the first televised exorcism. And I was like, if it was televised, why on earth can't I find it?
Right.
Like,
fair point.
so it just became like a real goose chase. And then I ended up finding way too much information.
Ooh, crack it open.
I know. Well, and that's why we drank. I'm drinking some Liquid Death.
Aw.
Can Liquid Death, can you sponsor us?
Why aren't they sponsoring us?
One time I DM'd them, they were not interested.
Well, that's not the way to do it, Em.
I know.
Silly. That's really silly.
It's worked before. I just wanted to see if they would be interested, but I think their vibe is, probably a little more hardened and tough. So not me.
We're tough. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm tough.
Anyway, Christine, I hope you enjoyed that story. I really liked it. I did not like how much research I had to do for it, but I did really like it.
I did like it a lot, and it's funny because it started to sound so familiar, and I was like, "This seems weird. Why would I know about this?"
I really did hold off on talking about the show aspect until
that must be what it is, because
end.
I feel like I must have watched that. I feel like I go through phases with these ghost shows where I watch like all of like an entire season in like 2 days of one of them, and then like find a different one. So
oh yeah,
I must have just been in a Paranormal Witness phase. I don't even remember watching that show, but I must have been into it for a second.
I'm currently re-binging Danny Phantom. I think it's my...
Speaking of ghost shows.
I was in love with that show. And also when I was 14...
Great show.
I know I was late to the game because by 14 most people probably weren't doing this. Like, I think it was much more like of a younger thing to do. But in my mind, I thought I could be Danny Phantom. I was convinced I would be Danny Phantom.
Kind of like an incarnation of Danny Phantom, I would say.
Don't you dare, because...
No, but you don't think?
I don't think I'm half ghost. I do think I'd like to be.
Empathy Phantom. That doesn't quite work.
Empathy Phantom.
Maybe it does work.
Phantom. Well, I always wanted to be... I really idolized Danny Phantom. There was something a little wrong about it. I was like, I will be you one day.
Oh.
I loved Danny Phantom. I was so jealous of every power.
He's a cutie.
He was a cutie. I didn't even... Well, that was obviously not on my radar, but I
Well,
I
as far
thought
as
he was
like
just so
idolizing him,
cool.
maybe. Or like,
I certainly thought he was just the coolest. And he's kind of like what I envision Captain America today, where I'm like, I just want to be you. I don't understand what's so hard about that.
what is so hard about that?
Yeah.
Well, Em, here's what I have for you. I have a story from St. Louis. And the reason I have this for you
Why is
today,
that funny?
it's not funny. The
Oh.
problem is last night we had a really bad thunderstorm and we lost power in our house for the first time ever.
Oh.
And I had zero way of doing any research. And for many hours, I cooked spaghetti by flashlight.
Aw.
And we read Leona books by flashlight. And then I was like, well, shit, now I can't prepare my, uh,
I
my
take it
notes.
I take it you have a gas stove?
I do have a gas stove, yes. And Blaze was like very alarmed when I was like, oh, I'll just light it. And he was like, you can't do that. And I was like, I mean, watch me.
See, this is what I'm talking about, Christine. Like you
Well, who wants
I
to
mean,
eat spaghetti? Then
well,
I gotta
you're
light the damn stove.
No, you're right, but I also like I know I would have been on your side in that case because I've seen it done before, but I also know that like the anxiety Blaze had in that moment
Yeah.
was sky high.
Like, I
For you
get
to just
it.
say, I'm just gonna light something of gas on fire. It's fine.
Give me the lighter, some matches. He was like, what the fuck?
I am zero
Oh.
surprise that his blood pressure probably soared for that moment.
He took the baby in the other room just in case, which is fair.
That'll do it.
Yeah. But so yeah, I did have a gas stove. I did not have a gas Wi-Fi router, so I was not able to research. So what I
Nailed
did
it.
was, being my savvy self, is I pulled our, by the way, New York Times best-selling book off of my nightstand.
Okay, Christine.
We haven't talked about that yet, and I just feel like I want to say I'm very proud of you and congratulations for being a New York Times bestselling author. That's pretty fucking badass.
Oh my
you know?
gosh, I'm so proud of you. We really haven't talked about it at all.
Our manager even was like, I didn't think this would happen. I was like, oh, me neither.
And when our book agent told us, it was actually I think the sweetest part of the
Oh,
whole thing
yeah.
because her name is Sabrina. She's a doll,
What a gem.
and she said that she'd never gotten to tell someone before that they were New York Times bestsellers. She was like,
She cried.
she cried. She was texting us like, get on the phone, urgent, urgent. And I was
I
like,
thought
oh, all
our
of our
book-
books burned away.
That's what I was like. Our books caught on fire. Why is that what we think? I don't know, but that's what I thought too.
But no, she was very excited. I think I was actually more excited for her excitement than to find out
Yeah.
that we were actually bestsellers. Because I
Literally,
don't
she
think
was like, "We're having a party here," and she like turned the camera, and people were like drinking champagne. I was like, "Damn, I wish I was invited to that."
I've never had someone throw a party about me and me not even be invited. By
Not
the way,
even be invited. I was like, "Good for you." I feel special in a weird way.
no, but it was very it's obviously an honor, but I still haven't processed it because
No,
it
me
doesn't
neither.
feel that doesn't feel like not me, couldn't be me.
Couldn't be me. Creator of 60 Seconds on TikTok could be me.
That could be me.
That
could
one's
be
you.
me. No, but also we should absolutely say thank you to everyone because the only reason that
you.
we were able to become bestsellers is because so many people went out and got the
bought
book.
the book, right? And so yeah, thank you to everybody who bought a copy, signed or not signed. It really put us in a place I don't think we
tizzy.
ever thought we'd be, which is on in a tizzy as well, but on the like New York Times list, which dream of mine that I didn't even think was a possible dream. So thank you to everybody who bought a copy. And last night I got to read it by candlelight.
It was well, I'm glad you got to. I feel like that's the only way to do it.
You got to do it by
Yeah.
candlelight.
In like a Morticia Adams dress,
right?
drinking blood or something.
Even
something
a coffin
horrible.
candle would be a good option.
Yeah, that's good too.
Just be careful because apparently there's nowhere I can put it that's safe.
Open air, open access space is where you can light it. You
But,
just
like,
refuse
but
to do it.
Open access? What do you mean?
Like a spot where Squidward isn't nailed to the wall right next to it. Like in a space where you can do this with your arms, you know?
Well, I thought I could, but then my microphone said, "What about this arm?" and it swung directly into the flames.
Okay,
so
fair.
that was my fault. Okay. So anyway, I was going through the book and I was like, well, I guess I'll just cover one of these stories because I legitimately don't have internet or and I didn't want to use up my phone battery. So I was like, I'm going to find a story that I haven't covered yet on the podcast. And I was, let me tell you, shocked when I realized I had not covered this one, because I was convinced, and maybe I have, but I looked through your handy dandy list on the website and it wasn't there. So hopefully,
Unless you've have any
renamed
memory
it.
of covering it in the last like few weeks, because I feel like once a month is when I go in and update
Yeah,
the
no,
web.
it's
So
definitely
I'm
like
always
an
like 4
older.
episodes behind.
Yeah, no, it's not a recent story. So I must have just like done it. I don't know. I thought I had covered it, but I didn't. So this is the story of Bertha Gifford, Missouri's first serial killer.
Oh, okay, cool.
And
Damn.
yeah, this is a story that was in the book for St. Louis, and I have more information in this episode now than is in the chapter because we had to unfortunately keep our verbiage shorter than usual to
We
hit
had
a page limit.
Yeah, we were told like 500 to 600 words, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Do you know how hard it is to?"
We were like, "You mean 12,000, right?" And they were like, "No, we don't."
We've already used up like 600 words like 1,000 times in this episode. Like,
Yeah,
what?
exactly. It was just a very, very big ask of us. And we did it. We had to chop out a bunch of stuff just to make it all fit, which ended up being the right thing to do because it's still quite a long book. But
Hmm.
I now have like I still have this like more informational set of notes. So this will have more in it than the book. But the book is
Fun.
fun little illustration. So, you might as well get both.
You know, the only thing that completely infuriates me is that now that book won't have a QR code next to it. That story won't have a QR code
I
about our
thought about
episode.
that too, and I
It's
thought,
not your fault. It's just
here,
like
if you have a printer at home, just print your own and tape it in there. Link it to this episode and tape it on in.
Oh my god, that's actually, well, I would do that because I'm a crazy person.
Yeah,
but I no,
I
that's,
wouldn't, but you,
that's
if you
I
have
would.
the print, if you have the ink and the wherewithal to really go for it, then like by all means, you edit that book.
Yeah, please go for it. However you need to.
So I'm just flying in the face of M's, neuroses right now and creating a QR-less
I'll be
chapter
fine.
for us.
I'll be fine.
Okay, we'll see. So this is the story of Bertha Gifford. She's Missouri's first serial killer and was born in October of 1871 in a place called Grubville, Missouri, as one of 10 children.
Sorry. Grubville.
Grubville.
So
yeah.
here's my thing about Grubville.
Sure.
I feel like they have to have a monthly buffet for the townspeople called Grub. Get your grub at Grubville.
Get your grub at Grubville. Get your
Well,
fill
we
at Grubville.
no, but you gotta say grub. The grub is the play on words, there.
Right, but I feel like if you say get your fill at Grubville, like you're already doing the. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. I know what you're saying.
Grub gets a grubbin at Grubville. No,
That sounds not fun.
grub time.
Grub it up, baby.
Grubville, are you listening? I need your mayor to figure that out.
Grubville,
for me, and then
mayor
I'll
of
come over.
Grubville. Get your fill at Grubville. That's what I'm
You
going
would
with.
you would think at least like a local mom and pop restaurant there, their menu, like they've got sections like sandwiches, starters, desserts. They've gotta have a grub section, right?
They gotta.
Yeah.
If they
Anyway.
don't, we're going to be small business owners in Grubville, Missouri pretty soon. Because
I feel like every restaurant in Fredericksburg has a Fredericksburger. Like you gotta play with it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, Grubville, if you needed unsolicited advice on how to run your city, step one.
Are we
There
helping
go.
you? No, probably not. So Grubville, and watch it not even exist anymore because this was 1871. But if it does, you better.
It's
take
now
advantage.
called like the food court or something. I don't know.
It's called the local food court. So then the information about her is very limited up until her marriage in December of 1894. I guess back then they weren't just like keeping records on things that happened in random children's childhoods. So in December of 1894, she married a man named Henry Graham in Hillsborough, Missouri. And after his death in 1907, she married a man named Eugene Gifford. And so now she has his last name. So Henry Graham just kind of got swept under the rug. And Eugene Gifford, she married him, took his last name, and that is how we got Bertha Gifford. So Bertha was alleged to be, despite her not traditionally sexy name, was one of the most beautiful women in the whole county of Jefferson County. She had dark hair, dark complexion. She was very swarthy. I don't think that's even the right word, but
You know I love it when you say
I
swarthy.
just couldn't help myself. I think that's usually reserved for the male persuasion, but she was, dark hair, dark complexion, just a beautiful woman. Swarthy is what I'm going to say.
I gotta say, from Thneed to swarthy, there's a real range of
The
things I'm
Christine
willing
story.
to tolerate. Yeah, they're all Christine jargon. From Thneed to swarthy.
Well, it's a tongue twister. So she and her second husband, Eugene, moved to Catawissa after their marriage, and this is now in Franklin County, Missouri. I looked this place up on TripAdvisor just for funsies, and there is a restaurant. Of course, I didn't look up Grubville restaurants, but I looked up Catawissa restaurants.
Problem one with the story, by the
Problem
way.
one, I've already made a big mistake. And the restaurant there is called Tavern, and it is described as pub. So that's the only thing on
Please,
TripAdvisor.
God, step 2 on how to improve the city. I need there to be a place called pub, and the description is tavern.
You do the opposite. You're so right. That would be just, oh, beautiful stuff. So yeah, it seems like even to this day, an extremely small town. And so at the time, I imagine this was pretty rural. Neighbors reported that Bertha was an extraordinary cook, as well as being very beautiful. She was reported to be friendly and caring. She would wear this white dress and carry her satchel to any neighbors who would be ailing. And she basically adopted the role of nurse and would tend to sick people all over town to help them recover, because back then you didn't really need a medical license to be running around healing people. So
Okay.
she was called the Good Samaritan of Catawissa, and she would often jump out of her bed in the middle of the night, put on her white nurse's uniform, which she would keep by the chair, by her bed, and then she would drive her horse and buggy through any sort of weather, even blizzards, to make it to a person's house, often before the doctor, like the county doctor, even arrived.
Wow, that's it sounds like a superhero when it's like, oh, I keep my suit right next to my bed, ready for a quick change at
a
any
cape.
moment.
Yeah, exactly. She
yeah.
has it at the ready. And so she would, if anybody was sick, she would be called upon, and she would often get there before the doctor even got there. So Bertha was not a trained nurse, like I said, but she was considered a very competent volunteer whom the local doctors truly appreciated, because she would get there very quickly. She understood symptoms and drugs, and therefore they allowed her to administer medicines to patients when they weren't there, which I'm like, okay, now you're verging into dangerous,
Recklessness.
reckless behavior. I agree. So when she would take a case on, she would basically take over the household. She would order people around and say this in and out of the sick room. She would impress the family by, this is a quote, she would impress the family in countless ways with her superior knowledge and experience. So
Okay.
she basically showed up and was like, all right, everybody listen up. I'm going to order everybody around and make sure we take care of this patient.
I feel like she ends, I know it ends badly, but right now it sounds like I'm totally on her side.
Local hero.
Yeah, I know girl boss is out, but she sounds like she's girl bossing. She sounds like
she's the original girl boss.
Yeah, I mean, she just sounds like someone I want to root for so badly. She's just doing all the right things. Oh, I love a swarthy person.
Same. I'm into it. So there was only one problem with Bertha, and I'm so glad that you brought this up right as this bullet approached me.
You're welcome.
And my scrolling, because there was only one problem, and that is that Bertha's patients always died.
Which then well, first of all, ring ding ding, but also
big problem. The only problem that really just can't be remedied.
It's
this is
a
big
super
problem.
duper problem.
Yeah.
But also the fact that they just kind of trusted her enough
I know.
to just start giving her medicine. I feel like that's something you do on an incredibly trial basis, and if it goes well, then maybe you up her responsibilities even more. But if this is the trial basis situation and everyone's dying,
shocking.
take a hint.
Take a hint.
Take the medicine away from her.
Take the drugs away. And so I say always died. technically almost always, but like
Un-
shockingly a lot.
like enough of them.
Enough to like probably, yeah, have hinted at a problem. So she would go to people's bedside, she would spend the night with them, tend to them, and in the morning, she would tell the families that unfortunately their loved one didn't make it through the night. And part of this whole charade was that she would weep harder than anyone else. So people, like, she just acted so devastated that people were like, well, she can't have had anything to do with it. Like, look how
Right.
broken up she is about this, that she wasn't able to save them.
Really.
If one of her patients, this part disturbs me, seemed to rally and start to recover, they would mysteriously take a turn for the worse when she was spending the night with the patient. So, like,
Convenient.
big yikes. Yeah. And people started to notice that it was strange whenever Bertha, now here's a lovely quote, plunks herself down in a sick room, the patient never gets well. So what a fun pattern to start noticing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, people did start to notice it. There's this article from 1928 that was super sexist and super fun to read because it's like, yikes. But here's a quote from that. The article said, "It should come as no surprise that women noticed this first. The men scoffed, but the women kept right on putting two and two together." So basically, they were like, of course, the gossips of the town noticed. And it's like, well, who cares if they're gossips? If they're the ones like,
I feel like that was like such a it was like so sexist it became feminist. It was like
yeah, I
it
mean,
was like
exactly.
of course the women and
It's like,
their
where's the
feeble
problem? Yeah.
of course their women and their feeble minds noticed this first. And it's like, sorry, are you just admitting that men didn't catch on to very obvious
No,
things?
exactly.
It's like, you just like shot yourself in the foot with your backwards
yeah,
argument.
it's like you're welcome, I think, is
Yeah.
what you're trying to say thank
It's
you.
like
I
women
think.
are so stupid that even men couldn't figure it out.
Silly women. Yeah.
What?
The silly women figured it out with all their gossip. Well, yeah, you're fucking welcome. And
Yeah,
so
it's like
it's such a backwards argument. It's not even an argument. Like, you're right. It just kind of
It's like
proves.
the women know how to communicate while the men don't, and therefore the women solved a crime. But the
Saved a
men
lot of
couldn't
lives.
figure
And,
it out.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, those stupid women.
Of course. It's so, the feeble mindedness just
Yeah.
runs rampant.
God, it's embarrassing. Men are it's
So
embarrassing, isn't it?
embarrassing.
Men are so embarrassing.
Oh God, eye roll. So it was, of course, when a man named Ed Brindley died, the 17th person under her care who died, that the men finally listened to the women and demanded an investigation into Bertha Gifford's behavior. So, the way Bertha had defended herself in the past was by saying each of her patients' deaths were caused by something called acute gastritis, caused by the quote, rural habit of eating a heavy dinner at noon and then laboring on a full stomach instead of having the main meal at night after the day's work is over, as the city man has learned to. Okay.
Oh, the city man.
So
Okay.
basically, she's saying, well, out in the country here, these people are eating such big breakfasts or lunches like at noon, and then they're working afterward on a big heavy full stomach,
Mhm.
and this is why they're all dying. So the logic there, I guess, worked for some people.
Okay, it seems like a lot of this non-logic is working for a lot of some people.
Somehow this is clicking for somebody, not I, but for somebody else. And so every time a patient died, this is what she would say, and they would write a death certificate and issued it and said it was acute gastritis. That's what Bertha told us, and that's how it went every single time.
But also, if it's acute, I mean, I don't know enough. This might be a legitimate medical thing I'm unaware of, but I feel like wouldn't you at least want to lie and call it like severe gastritis? Because I feel like acute makes it sound like you would have been fine.
No,
Also,
so I
like,
think the word acute in medicine is different. Like, it's not like a. This has always confused me as well. But acute means. I just looked it up to get the right definition. In medicine, describing a disease as acute denotes that it is of short duration and of recent onset. So basically,
it's time wise, not severity.
it's severe and sudden. Yeah. So it's sort of like, oh, this
okay.
happened. It's not like a chronic condition like you have your whole life. It's sort of like acute onset, like it just happened out of the blue.
Oh, okay. See, hey, I actually did learn something today.
Listen, sometimes I know a little
And
bit
from a
of something.
Wait a minute.
My little feeble mind concocted that sentence for you. I I did I did know that acute meant something different because I would always get very confused by that phrasing because in geometry we learned an acute
Yes.
angle is a very little one. So
That's how I always thought about it until literally
exactly.
today.
So it's a little I'm just going to say it doesn't make sense, folks. Whoever made that up doesn't make sense.
Well, I bet it was a man.
I bet
Anyway,
it was a man. If it was a woman, I'm sorry.
you betrayed us.
I'm sorry. Okay, so every time a patient died, she would say this acute gastritis thing, and they would write a death certificate without question. And from that same 1928 article, there was a quote: "Could a lot of ignorant gossips know more than the doctors?"
Yes.
And I'm like, she wasn't a doctor. She wasn't even a nurse. She
Yeah.
literally didn't have a medical degree. So, like, yeah, I don't know the argument there. It
There's
doesn't
at
track
least
anyway.
3 different chunks I want to scream about
Right, like
separately.
none of it makes sense. Exactly. Ignorant gossips. I'm like, they're pretty aware. I
Yeah, I
think
was
they
like,
would
what's
be
the
the
ignorant
opposite.
part? Also, she was not a doctor. Also, yes, gossips can be
Yeah,
on
also
top
that
of
argument
something.
overall doesn't really make sense. Exactly. Especially because, well, spoiler alert, they were right. So anyway, State Health Commissioner Dr. James Stewart did not trust her, so at least he was on board. At least not enough to check into what was going on. So he went and got the records of drugstores in the neighboring towns to examine them and see like what the pattern was. And he learned that Mrs. Gifford had been a steady customer of arsenic rat poison.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
well, I don't know why that surprised me because I feel like that was the only murder weapon back then. I
It's
feel like
always arsenic, huh?
it's always some sort of poison.
It's always
Every time.
poison. Yeah, and basically she would buy this and feed it to people, and the symptoms that arsenic produces are very similar to gastritis. So
Hmm.
the upset stomach, all that. And in many cases, she had made her purchases just before the patient's deaths, so it was pretty obvious that like this is what was going on. Weirdly enough, too, she also attended every single funeral held in the town over a span of 18 years. She only ever missed one, I guess, and she took command of the funerals and liked to make sure everything was done right. She would even pay for the embalming of one of her victims. So, like, extra disturbing. It's like when like the criminal like goes to the scene of the crime to like watch, you
Yeah.
know?
I do wonder, like, do you think she had some sort of guilt or
I
do you
don't
think it was all
know.
a cover?
I don't even know if it was I think she enjoyed being, like, involved in it. It almost seemed like because she would go to a sick person's house and kind of, like, take charge of the household, and then at a funeral, she would step in and be like, "Make sure that they are the most you respect them and give them the burial they deserve," and it's like, "You put them here." I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know if there was a disconnect in her mind or if she was I don't really know, honestly.
no clue.
It's just kinda creepy behavior. So she was arrested in Eureka, Missouri, and charged with the murders of 3 people at first, and she was brought before a grand jury. The entire time she was claiming innocence, of course, and threatening to sue for slander. When they presented the case, it turned out it went all the way back to 1909, which was 20 years before.
Mm.
And guess what happened that year? That was the year Henry Graham, her first husband, died. And
Ah,
mysteriously, he had died of cramps in the night before the doctor arrived. So they were like, wait a second, this goes all the way back to
it literally bringing it home.
bringing it home. Like her first victim was her first husband. The next known death in her care was in 1913, which was 4 years later, after Bertha had remarried. And this time it was her mother in law who happened to die of something called ptomaine poisoning, aka food poisoning. The article said Bertha's grief was, I like this quote, so I kept it, not so great, but considered adequate for a mother in law. So she
Okay.
wasn't sad, but like sad enough considering
It's
it was
like
just her mother in law.
she did what she had to do and,
Yeah, she shed a tear too, just to like keep up appearances.
right.
And then a year later, her 13-year-old brother-in-law, James Gifford, also passed away, and in her arms with those same symptoms of stomach cramps and vomiting.
Yeah, it's not feeling like guilt at all at this point. I
No,
think
it's
it's just
gross.
it almost feels like an addiction of like,
Yeah, it is. It keeps happening and it keeps happening closer and closer together, like we see, I feel like with serial killers.
yeah.
And also it reminds
I don't know enough about addiction. I don't know if I
No,
should have
yeah, I
said
don't
that,
know if
but but it feels like maybe compulsion. Is that the right a better
I
word
don't
for it?
know. Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know. It just feels like she cannot stop herself.
yeah, it sounds like she doesn't want to either.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true.
She what was I gonna say? Oh, it reminds me of those like Angels of Mercy or whatever the fuck, where they like kill people under the guise of like they're in a better place now, and it's like they weren't even gonna die, like they weren't sick.
Ugh, yeah.
Like in hospitals and stuff, when there are people who take people's lives, and it's like a weird power trip. I don't know. There's a lot there that I'm sure I'm misrepresenting, but it's all very creepy. So she kills her first husband, remarries, kills her mother-in-law, then kills her 13-year-old brother-in-law. So one man took to the stand to tell the grand jury how Bertha, this is very disturbing, had helped nurse his 3 children when they were sick. Sorry. Bernard was 15 months old, Margaret was 2, and Irene was 7. They had like small ailments, so they called Bertha to help, and all of them passed away of
Oh my
acute
god.
gastritis in her
I feel
care.
like at some point, like just come up with a different poison and a different
A
diagnosis because it's
different
getting
type
really
of
obvious. Like
yeah, after
the fact that
17. I mean, I
the
guess she
fact that
got
no,
through 17 without.
I guess so, but I feel like at least stir it up so people don't see how clear it is that it's
Yeah,
the
for her
same thing
mother-in-law,
every
she was
time.
like, "Oh, it was food poisoning." And I'm like, "That's I feel like the same thing and
Yeah,
also
that
not very convincing."
feels. Yeah, I
But I
agree.
guess it worked. I mean, I don't know. So it seemed this is again disturbing and might speak more to her psychology. She seemed to prefer to have children for patients whenever possible because they were more easily talked into taking whatever substance she gave them.
Oh
So she had like
God,
more control, basically.
yeah. It
One
just.
man who worked for the
Like,
Gifford family for 18 years testified that while living in the Gifford household, both of his young boys, Lloyd and Elmer, contracted acute gastritis out of nowhere and both passed away. Like under the
mm,
roof, she just kills her employees' kids. So only a month later, Bertha learned that a local woman was suffering of tuberculosis. So she showed up in her nurse's uniform and took charge. The woman rallied so strongly that they were trying to tell Bertha like to go home and they didn't need her anymore. And they were like, "Oh, we don't want to take advantage of your kindness." And then
uh-huh.
suddenly, the patient developed alarming stomach pains, nausea, and died.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
I
it's
mean,
like,
it
yikes.
just feels like dominoes. Like I
Yeah, yeah. It's nonstop. And so instead of assuming Bertha had something to do with it, the family of the woman believed like this must just have been some unlucky stroke of like bad fortune. But they took one more chance when another woman in the family became ill. They called Bertha again, and she too died of gastritis. So no wonder people are gossiping, so to
yeah,
speak,
like and the fact that anyone's calling it ignorance, like
or gossip. Even it's like that's not
yeah.
gossip.
It's like
That's
people are straight up nervous right
crime
now. Like
reporting,
yeah.
basically. Yeah. So another man who worked for the Giffords had complained that they hadn't paid him the money they owed him. So Bertha, the way they phrased it was Bertha paid him in time for it to be spent on his funeral. So she
Oh.
paid him back and it ended up going to his own funeral because she killed him.
Okay.
Yikes.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Uh-huh. A local man named S. Herman Pounds, considered one of the quote strongest physical specimens in the neighborhood, was known for indulging his hard cider. So Bertha brought him inside to give him something to sober up. The doctor arrived too late, and Bertha told him that Pounds had died of acute gastritis superinduced by alcoholism. So I guess she's adding
Mm,
booze into the mix now.
okay.
One woman described driving from East St. Louis to Catawissa to visit her ailing relative. Bertha seemed annoyed by this relative's presence, so she suggested that the woman go lie down and take a little nap. And when the woman woke up, Bertha was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, your relative has passed away."
I feel like this MO is just so obvious to us,
It's
I guess,
bad.
but
I
why isn't
know.
anyone else picking up on it?
I have no idea. So Bertha's last victim, like I said, was this guy Ed Brinley. He was also heavily into his hard cider, and he made the fatal mistake of leaning against Bertha's mailbox for a few moments. And while he was drunk, she spotted him from inside and said to her husband, "Please carry him in. He's clearly drunk and he needs to be sobered up. Carry him inside." But when he was dead 2 hours later, everyone finally was like, what the hell? Like, he was just wandering through the neighborhood and all of a sudden he goes into her house and winds up dead. So this is when they
So people are
finally
starting to.
admitted it.
Okay.
That's when the gossips were finally onto something, you know?
But gossips are like elbowing each other so hard. They're like, look at this.
What did we tell you? So the grand jury indicted Bertha for murder, but she still insisted she had done nothing wrong. Her priority during the trial was not getting photographed, and she apparently would sit in her cell with a blanket that she threw over her head whenever she heard someone walking down the hallway.
God. Oh my God. It's like,
And
I don't
this
even know
is-
where to start with that. Like
in the book, I'm pretty sure I marked this as like, this is M because it says she refused to eat anything but ice cream. She would literally just hide under a blanket and only eat ice cream. I mean,
that honestly, that is me. I would just like ostrich my head so nobody could even see me. I'd be like as dramatic as possible.
don't look at me. Where's
I'm
my
not
ice cream
me-
sundae?
I'm not me without my bowl. Wow, what a dramatic silly woman.
What
And by
a drama
silly I mean
queen.
it in the bad way. But
Yeah,
also,
in the worst
like,
way.
like was she hiding out of it wasn't embarrassment, right? Or
No,
was it she was just
I don't
afraid
know. I
of
think she just didn't want her photo in the paper or something. I'm not really sure why.
what she wasn't proud of what she'd done?
Maybe
Like,
maybe she didn't have her powder, and so she
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
press her face. I have no idea.
press her face. Is
I
that
don't-
what they used to do?
I don't know. I think I just made that up. So I was
Okay.
hoping you wouldn't pick up on it, but here we are.
Press their face.
I don't think
hey,
that's right.
It sounds right though. Like I know they
They
like
powdered
the powder
their face.
the powder press would be
Maybe
used to powder
that's-
their face.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
that makes sense to me.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so
Anyway,
glad.
she only had ice cream and no makeup, which also sounds like me. So
And hid
whatever.
under a blanket. I'm kind of loving this vibe. If it weren't a serial killer, obviously, but the vibe I
It's-
can get on board with.
If I needed like a really fucked up Halloween costume, I'm glad that I have one just built in by
You
just
can
covering
just
myself with a
hide
blanket
under
and
a
eating ice
blanket.
cream. Yeah.
I mean, it's all you need. You're like, don't you recognize me? I'm Bertha.
it's
I'm
like
swarthy Bertha.
take one look, you'll know exactly from
You'll
the
know
start.
it's me. But don't take a look. That's why I'm under this blanket. Don't look at me. Okay, so there's this chief of police of a St. Louis suburb called Webster Groves, and the chief of police's name was Andrew McConnell. He noticed that Bertha seemed particularly annoyed at the suggestion that she had poisoned the 3-year-old daughter of S. Herman Pounds. He was the strong physical specimen who she said died of alcoholism. When he continually pressed her about this, because every time they mentioned the 3-year-old daughter, she would get all bent out of shape about it. She finally snapped at him, well, anyway, I did not give any arsenic to that Pounds child. When he asked, okay, to whom did you give arsenic? She confessed
Right.
that she had poisoned a number of neighbors and their children. So she's like, but this one I didn't do. So he was like, I
this
guess
kid hurts my feelings, but the other kids,
How
I did
dare
not.
you insist that it's wild. But so when asked why, she explained that she wanted to put them out of their misery, which again reminds me of these like heroes, workplace heroes in medicine. Obviously very rare. I'm not like calling out people in medicine, but like you hear of these like serial killers who like kill their patients and say, oh, they're trying to make keep them out of their misery, put them out of their misery. It's very disturbing, especially when they're not even sick, you know.
Oh yeah.
So 2 of her victims' bodies were exhumed. Both showed traces of arsenic poisoning. However, Bertha was found not guilty by reason of insanity and was instead committed to the Missouri State Hospital number 4. Have you covered that? Didn't you just cover that? Or was that something different? It was in Missouri, I feel like.
Wasn't Missouri State Penitentiary?
Oh, okay, yeah. So this was the quote unquote
fourth one?
asylum. Because she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So she went to the state hospital number 4, where she remained until her death in 1951. And while there, she worked at the hospital's beauty shop before being transferred to the kitchen as a cook. She died on August 20th, 1951. Her husband, Gene, arranged to have her buried in Morse Mill Cemetery, and her grave is unmarked. And interestingly enough, if you look up the Undertaker records, it shows that the service and burial cost of $266.69 had only been covered up to $166.69. So to this day, the balance is marked as unpaid. So
Oh,
her burial is literally unpaid.
wow. Never getting paid, by the way.
I guess you're right. I feel like they should just kind of scrap any chance of getting
Yeah.
that back. And although counts vary, most historians and family members agree that Bertha Gifford killed at least 17 people over a period of 21 years, and some consider her to be America's third serial killer ever, and definitely Missouri's first. So that is the
Wow.
story of Bertha Gifford.
You know, I don't know if it's because the timing is that it's so far removed, or if it's because the MO was just so clear cut. I don't know what it was, but that felt like a much more palatable serial killer story
Yeah.
compared to like last week's was fucking rough.
Well, to be fair, last week people were writing like, "This is the first one I couldn't listen to," and I was like, "Well, that's saying something." I think.
Yeah, it was
after
that
almost
was
300
brutal.
episodes. Yeah,
That was brutal.
that was really rough, and it was more. I feel like more detailed, like more gruesome.
Yeah, maybe that's why, because I feel like I feel like it's one of those things where I don't want to say like one's a better serial killer
No, sure.
than the other, but the story felt like there was, I don't know, it didn't feel as dark, even though like, literally 17 people died, including children.
I
So,
know
like,
it's sort of like, I think part of it, like you said, is that it's removed a little bit because of the time period. Like we just
Mhm.
can't relate to it as much as like 20, 30 years ago. Um, and yeah, it kind of glossed over some of the details too. Like it didn't
yeah,
go
I
into
feel
really
like the
explicit
more
detail.
details, the worse. It
Yeah,
is.
for sure. So it's disturbing.
Yeah.
But
It's disturbing, but also I definitely had less of a miserable time than last week.
there were no smoothies, made
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
animal
I forgot
rabbit
about
parts.
that.
Ugh. I can't
Yeah.
forget about that. I wish I
I think
could
it's
forget.
just it feels. I mean, it was definitely less gruesome.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like there's no, accurate way
There's
to
no
say.
good true crime or murder. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I know what
But
you mean.
anyway, I appreciated this story being
kind of a
less
little break
traumatic.
from last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you. So thank the thunderstorm, I guess, that came through, and
That was
forced
God
me-
saying you've had enough.
That's enough. Turn
pull
off all the
over.
lights.
Pull over. We're gonna just focus on something else right now.
Ah.
Well, I already have next week's story picked out, which is rare, but I
Ooh.
am excited to get that done when we record next. So
Awesome. Well, I don't, but I'm gonna get it done soon.
I feel like I've been on a ghost train lately. Usually I do like 2 ghosts, couple aliens, maybe a cryptid, throw in a conspiracy theory, and then I go back to ghosts. Like I feel like I usually mix it up, but I feel like I've been on like a heavy ghost
I
train.
kind of
lately.
love the ghost train. I'm not gonna lie.
That is the mainstay of
I'm
my
all
half
about
of the
it.
show. But I just usually have a harder time finding so many solid ghost stories all at one time.
I don't know
Usually
how,
I'm-
because Zach Bagans finds them every single week for.
I know that man is the Walt Disney of ghosts because he will always find new content, and I don't know how he does it.
Just jump on his bandwagon, take his episodes, run with them.
Oh, can you imagine the day where there isn't an episode of his that I haven't?
dun,
That
dun.
scares me. That scares me.
That's not gonna happen. He's literally making more shows, like not even just more
I
episodes, but
know.
like multiple branches of shows.
I'm telling you, he is his own Marvel Cinematic Universe.
He is his own universe. It's
the
true.
Zach Bagans Cinematic Universe.
It's kind of amazing, actually.
the ZBCU, as I call it.
The ZBCU, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we got to do our little
After chat.
after chat.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, I'll see you over there.
Okay, sounds good.
And
That's
why
we
drink.